I saw everything. She's not crazy.
She told me what happened.
No, I don't believe you. He's lying.
He came home to silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong before you even know why. Marcus dropped his keys on the counter and listened. No pitter-patter of his daughter's feet. No kettle clicking off. No voice, not even a sigh, from the woman he loved more than his own breathing. Then his mother-in-law walked out of the kitchen holding a paper. She said, calm as someone ordering coffee, "Elena is being treated. Sign here." If stories like this pull at something inside you, the kind that stay with you for days, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a single word in the comments before this story begins. Because what I am about to tell you, you will not be able to unhear. Marcus didn't sign. He read the paper. It was a 72-hour psychiatric hold. Elena's name was on it. A doctor's signature was on it. 3 specific symptoms were listed: manic episodes, paranoia, a danger to the child. "I don't understand," he said. Vivian, his mother-in-law, sat down across from him like she'd been rehearsing this moment for years. She was ranting again, Vivian said. About money. About me. You know how she gets when she's overtired. I called her doctor because I love her. You should be thanking me, Marcus. He asked where Sophia was. Vivian smiled. With me tonight. She's fine. Eat something. Marcus didn't eat. He drove to the hospital on the other side of the city. They wouldn't let him in. They told him a doctor would call in the morning. They told him to be patient, that these things take time, that family support is important, but that right now, his wife needed rest. He stood in a parking lot at 11 at night and felt the ground open beneath him. In the morning, a man he'd never met before introduced himself as Dr. Kessler. He spoke in the careful tone people use when they think they are smarter than you. He said Elena had presented with symptoms for months. He said she had refused food. He said she had accused her own mother of stealing from the family trust. She needed help, he said. This was the humane choice. Marcus asked to see his wife. Not yet, Kessler said. Stabilization first. Order, he called it. Marcus asked how long. Kessler said the protocol was longer than 72 hours if the attending felt it necessary. He smiled while he said it. Vivian smiled from across the room. Marcus's next mistake was thinking he had nobody. Because there was a woman he hadn't spoken to in 4 years. Her name was Naomi. They had dated in law school, badly and briefly, and ended it because Naomi saw too clearly what he refused to see. She had warned him about Vivian once, the night before he proposed to Elena. That woman, Naomi had said, loves like a knife. Marcus had laughed it off. Now her name sat in his phone at 2 a.m, and her voice sounded like it had aged a decade in the 4 years they had been careful strangers. Marcus, she said, I heard. Are you alone? He asked her why she was calling. There was a long pause. Then she said, because I have to tell you what I know, and I am sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Not on the phone, she said. Tomorrow. Bring nothing digital. Don't tell Vivienne. Don't tell Elena's family. Marcus, I need you to trust me. He wanted to ask why, but the way she said his name made his hands go cold. So he said yes. The next morning, Vivienne served Marcus breakfast and asked whether he had considered a lawyer. She said it casually, like asking about the weather. Elena would probably need a conservatorship, she said. Sophia would benefit from stability in a familiar home. It would be easier if Marcus stepped back, just for a while, just until Elena got better. Marcus said he would think about it. Vivian reached across the table and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold. He didn't think about it. He went to meet Naomi. She was sitting at a corner table in a cafe 3 towns over, wearing a coat too heavy for the weather, with her hair pulled back tight. She looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. When he sat down, she didn't hug him. She just slid a folder across the table. "Marcus," she said, "Vivian didn't save your wife. She buried her." He opened the folder. It held bank statements, wire transfers. 5 of them, each one just under the reporting threshold, all routed from Vivian's personal account into a private clinic called Briarwood. The first deposit was dated on the 83rd day of Elena's marriage, the second on their first anniversary, a third on the day Marcus was promoted, a fourth 2 weeks before Sophia's 2nd birthday. The 5th was dated 6 weeks ago. Beneath the statements was a notarized copy of an evaluation form. Elena's name, a diagnosis Marcus had never heard of, a signature he didn't recognize at first. Except he did. He recognized the signature because he had watched Vivian forge Elena's father's name on a birthday card once, years ago, when she'd been too drunk to remember. He had pretended not to see it. It mattered. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Naomi's hands trembled for the first time. "I work in compliance now," she said, "for a different hospital. 3 months ago, Briarwood was flagged in an audit. I saw the doctor's name, Kessler. I saw the cadence of the payments. So I started pulling threads." She paused. Marcus, the night Vivian made the call to Dr. Kessler, was 3 days after Elena found the discrepancy in her father's estate. Vivian didn't want Elena to come to you with it. Vivian wanted Elena to be silent. Permanently. Instead, he asked the only question that mattered. "How do I get her out?" Naomi said, "Evidence. Public evidence. The moment Vivian can argue this is a family misunderstanding, it is over. We need her to be exposed in front of the people who trust her." Marcus asked what that meant. Naomi's eyes didn't soften. "Her charity gala. This Saturday. The whole foundation board will be there. The mayor will be there. We bring the proof there." He said, "Naomi, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I tried once," she said. "The night I told you about Vivian, you laughed. I am not blaming you. But I learned that night that telling you the truth would cost me the last small piece of you I had. So I kept it. I should not have kept it." He couldn't argue. They walked out together. Naomi stopped at the corner. "Marcus, I have to tell you something else, and it is worse. Vivian isn't the only one who knew. Elena's father knew. He told Elena she was imagining things. He told her to apologize to her mother. He told her to be a good daughter." The ground opened again. That evening, Marcus went to Briarwood and was granted a supervised visit. 45 minutes through glass. The room smelled like a mix of bleach and something older, something medicinal and sad. Elena looked like someone who had been slowly erased from her own life. Bruise-colored shadows under her eyes, hands shaking, hair uncombed. The clothes she had come in wearing, the blue cardigan he had given her on her last birthday, the day they had laughed about candles. He sat down and she looked at him like he was a ghost she had been told not to believe in. "You came." "Always," he said. "Tell me the real thing, whatever they will let you say." She let out a sound like a small animal, like something wounded trying to stand. She tried to speak. A nurse walked past the glass, an orderly, actually, and Elena stopped mid-sentence. Her mouth stayed half open. Her eyes didn't leave his. "They're watching." "I know. They told me if I fight it, they keep me longer. They told me Sophia would be safer in Vivian's home, that I was unfit, that I was sick, that I had fooled even myself." Her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus's hands went white around the phone the visitation center had given him. He didn't tell her about Naomi's folder. He didn't tell her about the gala. He didn't tell her anything that could become, in that sterile room, a piece of evidence against her. He told her what she needed to hear. "Hold on. 2 more days. Hold on for me." Elena's eyes filled, but she didn't blink. She didn't wipe them. She had forgotten how, or she had decided that the tears belonged to him. "She took everything from me. Everything. My daughter, my name, my memories. She made me write letters saying I was sorry, and I signed them because I thought I was crazy, because I started to believe it." "Not yet," he said. "I swear to you, not yet." He left Briarwood and sat in his car until his hands stopped shaking. The sun set somewhere past the building's tower, and the light came through his windshield in long orange strips. He called Vivian. He told her he had been thinking about the conservatorship. He told her he agreed with her. He told her Elena needed to rest, needed more time, needed whatever Vivian said she needed. Vivian, on the other end of the line, made a small sound of relief. She thanked him. She said it would all work out. She said, "I knew you would see reason, Marcus. You're a good man." He had never hated anyone in his life. Now he did. The hatred sat low in his chest, like a stone under snow. Saturday came like weather. Vivienne had been preparing for months. The ballroom of the Grand Celeste was dressed in cream and gold. 300 guests, a stage, a podium. The annual award for the family's foundation. The mayor was there. 2 judges. Donors whose names were on buildings Marcus walked past every day on his way to work. People whose names he had seen on checks. People who had called Elena a dear. Marcus wore a black suit he had never worn before. He had bought it that week. It fit like a sentence he meant to deliver. Naomi wore gray. She carried a leather folder in a bag that looked like an old purse. The folder was heavier than it looked. They stood near the back as Vivienne walked to the podium. Vivienne looked smaller than Marcus remembered. Her hair was perfect. Her pearls were the same pearls she had worn to their wedding. She looked radiant in the way people look radiant when they have never been told no loudly enough. She thanked the board. She told a story about Elena that Marcus had never heard. A story about a daughter who had struggled with motherhood and mental health. A story about a mother who had done the hardest thing a mother could do. She said her daughter was unwell and that the family was holding together with prayer. Donors nodded. The mayor nodded. People whose names Marcus knew only from checks clapped. The polite clapping of people who had written checks but had never asked questions. He looked at Naomi. She looked back. He gave one nod. She walked to a side room. She had spent 3 days arranging this. The AV tech she had quietly contacted was waiting there with his shoulders squared. He was the cousin of one of the nurses at Briarwood, whose own mother had been silenced years ago by a misdiagnosis Vivienne had paid for. He had a reason for being angry. He was very good at his job. And his job was to make sure the screens did not fail tonight. Vivienne finished her speech. The applause began, polite and warm. Then the screens behind her changed. Bank statements, Wire transfers to Briarwood. 5 payments. Dates Marcus knew by heart. Patient names scrolling at the bottom of the screen in small print. A gasp went through the room. The mayor leaned forward. Vivienne turned, and her face did something Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. It went from radiant to nothing. Just nothing. The mask fell, and underneath there was no face. There was only a woman who had bet everything on quiet and lost. She tried to say something. She tried to say it was a lie, that this was family business, that she had been framed by her own unstable daughter, by a son-in-law who could not face reality. The microphone cut her off. A second document came up. The forged evaluation, the diagnosis, the signature. Kessler, M.D., and then, in a smaller font, the connection. Kessler, M.D. Vivian Kessler, née Aldridge, M.D. Same last name, same bloodline. Cousins, actually, but it didn't matter. The connection was there. The connection was always there. Marcus walked up to the podium. He had rehearsed nothing. He had no notes. He only had his voice, which was shaking. He said the quietest thing he had ever said in public, the way quiet things sometimes arrive loudest. My wife is not sick. My wife is being silenced. And the woman at this podium knew it every day. So did her cousin. So did her patient list. The room broke. Not loudly, quietly, the way ice cracks under a frozen river, the way a long-known truth finally admits itself to a room that never asked. Vivian was escorted out by donors who had been her shield for 15 years. She tried to smile at the men in uniform at the door. She tried to call Marcus a liar on her way past. She tried to find the security guards who knew her name. No one did. 300 people had just learned her name in a different way. Kessler was reached at his practice that night. He tried to claim he had been misrepresented. He tried to claim the documents were fabricated. He tried to claim Briarwood had been misled. Naomi's camera, the one she had quietly placed on a shelf in his waiting room under the guise of a magazine rack refurbishment, caught the words he said after he hung up the phone. He said, on his own voicemail, to his own assistant, "Burn the Briarwood files. If anyone finds those, I am finished." He had walked right into a setup that had been walking around him for 3 days. The next day, Elena was released. She walked out of Briarwood in the same clothes she had come in with, the blue cardigan, the one Marcus had given her, holding a discharge paper signed by a brand new acting director who had arrived that morning with a state investigator at his side. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood on the steps and waited. The way you wait when you have been underwater so long, you have forgotten what air smells like. Marcus stood at the bottom of the steps with Sophia in his arms. Sophia hadn't seen her mother in 11 days, which is a long time when you were 4. "Mommy?" Sophia said. Elena's hands came up. She didn't walk down the steps. She sat down on the top step and held her arms open, the way mothers do in airports in movies, except this was real, and her hands were shaking, and her daughter ran, and they met halfway. "Marcus," Elena said, when Sophia's arms were around her neck. "I thought I was crazy. They almost made me believe it." He sat beside them on the cold step. He put his arm around his wife. He didn't say the obvious things. He had learned in 3 days that obvious things are sometimes the most useless things, because they assume the other person hasn't already survived them alone. She asked first about Sophia. He told her Sophia was safe. He told her Sophia had been asking for her every night. He told her Sophia had said the night before when she couldn't sleep, "Where did Mommy go?" Marcus said he had held his daughter and said, "Mommy is coming home. Soon. I promise." Elena's face crumbled. Not the way a strong face crumbles, the way a child's does, when the child finally understands the world can be unkind, but has decided to survive it. She didn't use her mother-in-law's name. She didn't talk about Kessler. She asked only one question, the question that mattered most. "How did you know?" He thought for a moment. Then he said, "Someone I should have listened to years ago. She saved you." At the door of the car, Naomi was standing a few feet away, not intruding. Elena looked at her for the first time. There was a small recognition. Naomi had been at their engagement party. Naomi had said something that night, a sentence that had flown past them like a paper airplane. Elena had dismissed it, the way Marcus had, the way the whole family had. Naomi walked over. She didn't offer her hand. She didn't hug a woman she had just met in this strange new way. She just said, "I'm sorry I didn't push harder." Elena looked at her for a long time. Then she said, "Thank you for pushing this once. Once was enough." The look between them was small and whole. Marcus noticed. He would think about it for years. He would also stop pretending he hadn't noticed. 2 weeks later, Vivian was charged. 12 counts, including the one Marcus hadn't known about until now. A woman in another state. A friend's mother. The same diagnosis, the same clinic, the same pattern. Vivian had built her life on quiet disappearances, on the careful art of making inconvenient people unwell in places no one listened. The foundation board resigned in pieces, the way boards do when the donors begin to ask questions. The mayor issued an apology that was supposed to be a paragraph and ended up being 3 pages. The donors reallocated their money to a fund that would help families wrongly committed, a fund Naomi quietly ran on the side without pay because someone had to, because some fights are not about money. Marcus brought Sophia to the new office of that fund a month later. Sophia ran ahead into a waiting room full of children whose parents had been similarly buried. Elena watched from a chair by the window with her hands folded. Not the way a fragile person folds her hands, but the way a strong one does when she has earned back the right to be calm. Her wrists still had the faint white lines from the wrists of the sweater she had been given at Briarwood, lines that would fade with time, the way all the wrong things eventually fade when the right people stay. Naomi came out from the back. She saw Sophia. Sophia ran and hugged her knees. Naomi knelt, the way mothers and aunts kneel. "Sophia, Mommy said you save people," Sophia said. Naomi smiled. "Mommy saved herself, kid. I just opened one door." Marcus leaned against the wall and let himself, for the first time in weeks, exhale. He didn't know it then, but he was witnessing the first morning of the rest of their lives, and it smelled of paper and floor wax and small shoes. Later that night, alone with Elena on the balcony of a rented house that smelled like new wood and lemon soap, she turned to him and said the thing she had been carrying for 11 days. "Marcus, what would have happened if Naomi had never called you?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked at the city. He looked at the sky, the way you look at a sky you have just been returned to. He looked at her. "We'd have lost," he said, quietly, the way they always want you to lose. She nodded. The kind of nod that contains 10 years of marriage. The kind you can only give when you have survived the worst thing your family ever did to you, and your family did it on purpose. "Marcus," she said, "I want to do the thing I was supposed to do. Talk to my father. Tell him the truth. Will you come with me?" He said, "Always." 3 days later, they sat in his car outside his father-in-law's house, a house Marcus had driven past for 10 years without ever seeing, because some houses hide in plain sight. Elena went in alone first. Marcus waited in the driveway, in the car, engine off, window down, listening to the cicadas. He didn't have audio. He didn't want any. What happened inside was between Elena and the man who had chosen peace over his daughter for 40 years, who had been told what was happening and had decided to look the other way, because looking would have cost him his second wife, his Sunday lunches, his reputation as a man of standing. She came out 40 minutes later. She didn't say what was said. She didn't need to. The way her shoulders looked said everything. They were not the shoulders of a woman who had been forgiven. They were the shoulders of a woman who had forgiven him. "He's old," she said. "I forgave him. I won't visit." Marcus nodded. He didn't ask more. Some things, once said between father and daughter, are not meant to be carried into a car, into a marriage, into a third life that has nothing to do with the original sin. The next morning, Marcus received an email from Vivian's lawyer. Settlement offer, NDA, walking away money, the kind of money that buys silence. He deleted it without reading past the third line. Then he opened a new message and wrote a single sentence to Naomi. He wrote, "I'm going to learn how to listen." She replied in 3 seconds. She wrote, "You already started. Don't stop." That was 3 years ago. Elena runs a clinic for survivors of coercive psychiatry, in a building with good light and a waiting room that has toys. The kind of toys children play with when their parents are finally being heard. Naomi is a co-trustee. Sophia calls them both her heroes, which is what children say when adults have earned nothing but have chosen correctly once. Marcus doesn't talk about that night often. Not because he's ashamed, because the truth is that the worst night of his life still belongs to him, in the sense that he has to live with what he didn't see when he should have. In the sense that the love he had for Vivienne was, in the end, only ever politeness. Real love, the kind that saves you. He had been mistaking for kindness for 10 years, and it had nearly cost him everything. He thinks, sometimes, about the parking lot outside Briarwood, about the silence in his house when he came home from work, about Vivienne's cold fingers on his hand across the table, about how close he had come to signing, and how signing would have been the kindest thing he could have done, for the wrong reasons. He thinks about the woman he loved first, who came back when she didn't have to, with a folder in her bag and a tremor in her hands, and saved the woman he loved now. He thinks about how few words there were between them those 4 years, and how much those words were worth when they came back. He thinks about how mercy doesn't always arrive clean. Sometimes it arrives late, wearing a heavy coat that doesn't match the weather, sitting at a corner table in a cafe 3 towns over, in a neighborhood neither of them would have visited alone. Sometimes it arrives in the voice of a woman who has been quiet for 4 years, who has been waiting for the right kind of disaster to tell you the right kind of truth. And every time he stands on his back porch in the evenings, watching Sophia chase fireflies in the new yard of the house they finally own, He says the same quiet thing to himself. The same quiet thing he will probably say for the rest of his life. That love is not what you say to someone in the clear moments, in the photographs, in the toasts. Love is what you do in the ones that almost bury you. Love is the phone call at 2 a.m. Love is the folder across a corner table. Love is the drive to a parking lot in the rain. Love is the signature you don't sign, the truth you don't unlearn, the door you open once when you know it will cost you. If this story stayed with you, tell me one thing in the comments below. Who in your life came back when they didn't have to? And what would have happened if they hadn't?